My name is Brianna Comer, and I've been involved with Youth for Christ for the past 9 years. During that time, I've had the opportunity to serve with the Juvenile Justice Ministry in several different sites. First at the Lee County Youth Development Center, then at the Transitional Living Home, and later at Girls Ranch. A few years into my involvement, I began hosting campus life in my classroom at Opelika Middle School and briefly have served as events coordinator as well. I was first introduced to Youth for Christ through a small group with our executive director, Tabitha, in 2017. I remember her sharing that she was looking for volunteers to serve in a new ministry that she had just started working with. At the time, I felt that I was growing in my faith, and I also felt convicted that I wasn't actively sharing my faith. As a teacher, I already had a heart for young people, and I saw this as a great opportunity to begin pouring into the youth in a deeper way. My first experience volunteering with Youth for Christ was at the LCYDC Detention Center. My initial thought was that this was completely out of my comfort zone, but I decided to at least check it out. Our first time there, we would do what we normally do when we went, which was start out praying before we went into the facility. And then once we were inside, we would begin by an icebreaker or a game with the students. And then we would have a time of devotion. And then we would end by praying for and with the youth there. There were many moments when I questioned myself thinking, what could I possibly offer these youth whose life experiences are so different than my own? Even as I began serving in other ministry sites, those feelings did not go away completely. But over time, the Lord has taught me something incredibly important, that my sense of inadequacy within myself and my own abilities was actually part of the point. He was showing me that this was never about striving my own strength, but about depending on Him. The Lord has taught me and is still teaching me true humility and what it looks like to take my eyes off of myself and keep my eyes on Him and all that He wants to do through me. As I continued to say yes, God opened doors to incredible relationships with the youth. I've had the privilege of walking alongside so many young people, building trust and witnessing God move in their lives. What I didn't expect was how much I would also be changed in the process of being able to volunteer with YFC. Volunteering has helped me to be more bold about sharing my faith, and it's been incredibly rewarding being able to come alongside the youth that we have the opportunity to work with. At each ministry site, it often started the same way. A lot of times the youth would have up walls. They would question our intentions or maybe be uncertain about whether or not they could trust us. But week after week, as we faithfully showed up, those walls slowly began to come down and trust was built. Relationships began to be formed. And those students began to see that we genuinely loved them, we cared for them, and we wanted to point them to the one who could truly meet their deepest needs. There have been many connections over the years. One of those that stands out to me would be Keontae, and if you came last year, you've heard a little of his story from Mr. Charles as well. He was a youth who was at the Transitional Living Home that we would go to once a week in the evenings, and every time that we would go, he would typically have his head down, his hood over his head, and it was very discouraging from the leader standpoint because we felt like he was never taking it in or never listening. However, as time went on, we realized that he was taking it all in the whole time, and he eventually asked to be baptized, and Miss Tabitha and Mr. Charles had the opportunity to do that. And even today, Mr. Charles is still in contact with Keontae and continuing to pour into him. Another ministry model, aside from the Juvenile Justice Ministry, is the Campus Life model at EAYFC. And for Campus Life, we typically meet once a week for club. And at my school, we meet on Thursdays, and we typically have food for the students, which is a great draw for the kids to come. And after food, we'll have games, and then we have a time of discussion questions and wrap up. Campus life in the schools is a great way to be able to reach youth who may otherwise not have the opportunity to hear of the gospel of Jesus. They can interact with other students who may also have had that opportunity. We've been hosting Campus Life at OMS for 7 or 8 years now, and from that, we have also had a few small groups to come from that. So many of the young people today are searching for purpose, for truth, and for a place to belong. Youth for Christ equips people like you and I to be able to step into those spaces and to share Jesus at a pivotal time in students' lives. One of the things that I love most about YFC is its focus on reaching unchurched youth or those who might never have the opportunity to hear the gospel otherwise. These are the students who are often overlooked and yet deeply in need of hope. One of the Campus Life students who comes to mind is one who was very angry when I met them. In fact, one of our first interactions actually led to them being removed from my class from cursing at me. But fast forward several months, and eventually that student started attending Campus Life. And for the very first time, at first, they were very quiet and kind of removed, but over time they started to let their walls down and become more comfortable and began to let us leaders in. And we began to see the student really enjoying Campus Life and taking in all that we were going over. Eventually, the second year they attended Campus Life, they asked to receive Jesus. And then I saw the student not too long ago, and they were just filling me in on how things were going. And at the end of our conversation, the student looked at me and they said, "Ms. Comer, I love you." And then that was the end. And at that moment, that kind of took me back to that first moment that we had in that interaction. And it was just incredible to think about and remember how God has moved so in that student and has changed them. And I'm just very excited to see how God will continue to move in that student's lives. This year especially, we've seen more and more students, even than ever before, responding to accept Jesus. They're asking really deep questions, and they really are hungry for the truth. They're often turning to the world to try and find answers and fulfillment, and they're seeing that it is an empty pursuit. But in Campus Life, students are able to find a safe space of belonging, and more importantly, they're pointed to Jesus, who has all the answers that they're searching for. Campus Life does include our weekly club meeting. However, it also stems out and includes small groups, student leadership. We have a pastor's panel where students are encouraged to ask any questions they otherwise might not be comfortable asking, and other events that we do with our youth. All of these things help to build those relationships and point the students to Jesus. Through YFC, we get to be a part of these students' stories, sharing our own stories and how God's story has intersected with ours, and showing them that the same can be true for them. There are many ways that you could be a part of Youth for Christ and be a part of what God is doing through this ministry, whether it be volunteering, partnering financially, faithfully praying, or any other aspects that you feel gifted or called in. And I would encourage you, even if you have just a small tug of your heart, to explore what God might want to do to use you as a part of this ministry. Not only to bring life and hope into the stories of the youth, but also to deepen and grow your own story as you join in this important and urgent mission of sharing Jesus with this generation.